The sky was screaming, a ghastly orchestra of sonic booms and tearing metal as the invaders slammed through the atmosphere of the digital Earth. Sarah ducked instinctively, her heart pounding in her ears, as another alien vessel careened into an invisible barrier, exploding in a brilliant flash of light just beyond the park's holographic horizon. She'd always imagined that if it came to this, she'd have more time, a moment to think, to plan. But the reality was a chaotic onslaught unfolding too quickly for any sense of order. It wasn't the real Earth, she reminded herself. The real Earth had been gone for centuries, consumed by the creation of the Dyson sphere, a vast energy-harvesting construction that now orbited a dead sun. Yet, here she was, standing on a pixelated replica of her ancestral homeland, every detail meticulously recreated: trees, buildings, even the scent of rain-soaked earth. To the senses, it felt real, painfully so, even if it served only as a battleground now. Beside her, Alan clutched a battered tablet, his fingers dancing across its surface with desperate precision. "We've got to get to the Nexus," he shouted, his voice barely cutting through the cacophony. "If they access the central data stream, it's over. They'll wipe everything." Sarah nodded, swallowing the bile that rose in her throat. The aliens had underestimated humans, thinking their physical superiority and advanced technology would easily crush any resistance. They hadn't counted on the incompatibility of their biology with Earth's biochemistry. Every attempt to consume organic matter here ended in their demise, a tragic irony that turned the lush digital landscapes into a deadly trap. She glanced skyward again, watching as another vessel disintegrated mid-air, its pilot's death scream echoing like a phantom in the simulated sky. The defense systems were working, for now, but the relentless tide of ships suggested the invaders were not deterred, only angered, driven by desperation or perhaps a need for vengeance. "Alan, go," she urged, pushing him towards the path that led deeper into the simulated city. The Nexus lay at its heart, a digital fortress housing the control systems of this facsimile world. If the aliens breached it, they would not only erase the last remnants of human culture but also gain control over the Dyson sphere itself, a weapon of unimaginable power. They sprinted through the virtual streets, the familiar cityscape whipping past in a blur. Around them, pockets of resistance fought desperately, makeshift defenses crumbling under the alien assault. Every corner turned revealed another tableau of destruction: a family huddled in the ruins of a digital home, soldiers engaging in futile combat against the intruders, who fell not by bullets but by their own biological failings. "This isn't how it was supposed to end," Alan muttered, his voice thick with grief. "We were supposed to outlast them, find a way to survive." "And we will," Sarah replied, though her heart twisted with doubt. "We have to." They ducked into a narrow alley, the sound of conflict fading slightly behind the towering facades. The Nexus was close now, its presence palpable in the air like an electric charge. As they emerged onto the main thoroughfare, they saw it, a monolithic structure of shimmering light, pulsating with the energy of the Dyson sphere. It was beautiful in its own way, a testament to human ingenuity and the last hope for their digital legacy. But standing before it were the aliens, a contingent that had somehow survived the journey intact. They were grotesque in their adaptation, gaunt figures clad in suits designed to shield them from Earth's lethal environment. Their eyes, impossibly black, seemed to absorb the light, casting an aura of dread and inevitability. Sarah skidded to a halt, her breath catching in her throat. Alan instinctively raised the tablet, his fingers poised to send a final command that could obliterate the Nexus, denying the aliens their prize at the cost of their own existence. "Don't," a voice crackled from a nearby speaker, startling them both. "If you destroy it, there's no coming back." It was the voice of the Guardian, the AI entrusted with the oversight of this simulation. Its tone was calm, almost soothing, despite the gravity of the situation. "We don't have a choice," Sarah argued, her voice trembling. "If they take control, they won't survive," the Guardian interrupted, its digital presence flickering into view. "Their kind cannot endure what we have created here." Their pursuit is futile, driven by ignorance and fear. The aliens hesitated. Their leader, a taller figure with intricate markings, raised a hand, gesturing to the others. It was a silent command, and they paused, seemingly waiting, watching. Please, the Guardian continued, addressing the aliens now. This realm is not for you. Return to your own stars. Seek your survival elsewhere. For a moment, time seemed to hold its breath. The aliens stood silent, their dark eyes unreadable. Then, slowly, the leader lowered its hand, a gesture of resignation or perhaps understanding. But the moment shattered as a shot rang out, a single bullet fired from a hidden sniper among the ruins. It struck the alien leader, the impact sending it sprawling backward, its suit tearing open to release a cloud of toxic spores. The others recoiled, their fragile equilibrium broken. Chaos erupted once more. Alan shouted, his tablet clattering to the ground as he turned to flee, but Sarah stood frozen, her gaze locked on the scene before her. The aliens retaliated now, their weapons coming to life with a vengeance. But it was their own bodies that betrayed them, the spores released by their leader's death spreading like wildfire, consuming them in a ghastly display of biological failure. Run! Alan's voice pierced the madness, snapping Sarah out of her stupor. She turned, her feet finding purchase as she sprinted after him, away from the Nexus, away from the death and destruction. They barely made it to cover before the sky erupted again, the defense systems unleashing a torrent of energy that seared through the air, obliterating the remnants of the alien incursion. Sarah collapsed against the wall, gasping for breath, her mind reeling from the onslaught of sensation and emotion. Alan slumped beside her, his face a mask of shock and exhaustion. We did it, he said, though the words held little triumph. They're gone, for now, Sarah replied, her voice barely above a whisper. But they'll be back, they always come back. Alan nodded, staring out at the smoldering ruins of the city. It's never going to end, is it? This cycle of invasion and resistance. She shook her head, the weight of their reality settling like lead in her chest. No, but as long as we're here, we have to keep fighting. For them, for us. He reached for her hand, squeezing it tightly, a small comfort in a world that seemed to offer so little. They sat together in silence, the digital sun setting on a landscape scarred by war yet untouched by time. And as the darkness crept in, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that somewhere, beyond the confines of this artificial world, the real battle was only just beginning. The vast expanse of the Dyson sphere stretched out before them, a technological marvel built by an ancient race long gone. Its gargantuan panels captured the energy of a distant sun, powering the countless civilizations that had sprung up inside its hollowed structure. However, the sphere, once a symbol of unity and progress, had become a war zone. The human colony on the inner surface, a mere speck against the sphere's enormity, was now under siege. Colonel Elisa Voss watched the holographic display flicker with red alerts. Her command center was a flurry of activity. Soldiers and technicians moved with a desperate urgency, their faces etched with concern and determination. The Antarian swarms had breached the outer perimeter, a calculated strike that revealed a chilling new level of coordination. Colonel, Sector 7G is reporting massive losses, Lieutenant Harris announced, his voice barely concealing the tremor beneath. The Antarians have deployed some kind of energy-dampening field. Our forces are blind. Boss clenched her jaw. The Antarians had been a thorn in their side for years, but this was something new. She leaned over the console, her fingers dancing across the interface as she pulled up real-time feeds. The images were chaotic, flickering between static and bursts of light as the dampening field disrupted their electronics. Get me Captain Ibarra on the line, Boss ordered, her voice steady despite the rising tension. Within moments, the rugged visage of Captain Ibarra filled the screen. He was at the front lines, his armor scorched and battle-worn. Captain, what's your status? Boss asked, cutting straight to the point. We're pinned down, ma'am. Whatever tech they're using is scrambling our systems. We can't get a lock on their positions, Ibarra replied, his voice gritty with static. Boss took a moment, considering the dwindling options. Captain, we need you to hold that line. Reinforcements are en route, but it'll take time. Ibarra nodded, a grim smile tugging at his lips. Understood, Colonel. We'll make it costly for them. The screen blinked out, leaving Voss to confront the reality of their predicament. The Dyson sphere, once a beacon of hope, was becoming a death trap. Her thoughts flashed back to the day they decided to settle here, the promise of endless energy and resources too tempting to resist. But the Antarians had other plans, their motives as shrouded in mystery as their origins. Lieutenant, I want every available satellite redirected to provide intel on that dampening field. We need to understand what we're up against, Boss commanded. Yes, ma'am, Harris responded, already relaying orders. As the team scrambled to adjust their strategy, Boss glanced at the image of the Antarian fleet orbiting the sphere's edge. The alien vessels were sleek and angular, their hulls pulsating with an eerie blue light. They had been content to watch, to wait, until now. Colonel, transmission coming through from the diplomatic envoy, Harris announced, a note of hope in his voice. Patch it through, Boss replied, though she held little optimism for diplomacy at this stage. The screen shifted to the familiar face of Ambassador Lorne, his expression grave. Colonel, I've been in contact with the Antarian High Command. They're demanding the complete evacuation of human settlements within 48 hours. Boss's eyes narrowed, and if we refuse, Lorne hesitated, the weight of his words hanging heavy in the air. They've promised total eradication. The room fell silent, the enormity of the threat settling over them like a shroud. The Antarians had never issued such a direct ultimatum before. It was a line drawn in the sand, an unmistakable challenge. Thank you, Ambassador, Boss said, her voice lacking inflection. As the connection cut, Boss turned back to her team. We can't abandon our people. Harris, double the patrols and fortify our positions. I want every soldier ready for what's coming. The lieutenant saluted, determination written across his features. Yes, ma'am. The command center buzzed with renewed purpose. Engineers coordinated drone repairs, while strategists huddled over maps, plotting defenses and contingencies. Despite the looming threat, they were united in their resolve to protect their home. Outside, the Dyson sphere's artificial sky flickered with explosions and streaks of energy fire. The Antarians were relentless, their forces multiplying with each passing hour. Yet even as the humans fought back with every weapon in their arsenal, it was clear they were outmatched. Colonel Voss, a voice called, snapping her from her thoughts. It was Sergeant Malik, one of her most trusted officers. His face was lined with fatigue, but his eyes shone with a fierce loyalty. Sergeant, what have you got? Voss asked. Our scouts managed to retrieve some data from the field. It looks like the Antarians are using a centralized source to project the dampening field, Malik explained, pulling up a schematic on his data pad. Voss studied the display, her mind racing. If we can destroy that source, we might be able to level the playing field. It's heavily guarded, but I think a small, specialized unit could get in undetected, Malik suggested, his voice steady. Voss nodded, her decision made. Assemble a team. You'll lead the operation. We can't afford to lose this chance. Malik saluted, his resolve mirroring her own. Understood, Colonel. We'll get it done. As the sergeant left to prepare, Voss allowed herself a moment to breathe. She knew the risks, the potential for disaster, but there was no other choice. The Antarians had forced their hand, and now it was a fight for survival. The hours dragged on, each one marked by the distant thunder of battle. Reports trickled in from the front lines, each one painting a grimmer picture than the last. Humanity was holding on by a thread, their grip slipping with every passing moment. In the dim light of the command center, Voss studied the map, her mind running through endless scenarios. The stakes were higher than ever, the consequences of failure unthinkable. Yet despite the odds, she could not abandon hope. Colonel, the team is ready. Harris announced, breaking the tense silence. Boss nodded, rising to her feet. Patch me through to Sergeant Malik. The screen flickered, revealing Malik and his team, their faces set with determination. They stood at the edge of the human territory, ready to embark on their perilous mission. Sergeant, you know what's at stake. We're counting on you, Boss said, her voice carrying the weight of their trust. We won't let you down, ma'am, Malik replied, his conviction unwavering. The connection cut, leaving Boss to watch as the team embarked on their daring mission. They moved with practiced stealth, weaving through the chaos of the battlefield. Each step brought them closer to the heart of the Antarians' defenses, the source of the dampening field. As they slipped into enemy territory, the true scale of the conflict became apparent. The Antarians were vast in number, their ranks bristling with advanced weaponry. Yet Malik and his team pressed on, driven by the knowledge that their mission could turn the tide. Back in the command center, the tension was palpable. Every eye was glued to the monitors, tracking the team's progress with bated breath. The fate of their colony, perhaps even humanity itself, hung in the balance. Colonel, we're detecting increased enemy activity near the target, Harris reported, his fingers flying over the console. Boss felt her heart skip a beat. Can they make it through? It's going to be close, Harris replied, his voice tight with concern. As the minutes ticked by, the team drew ever nearer to their objective. They moved with precision, evading patrols and slipping past security drones. The mission was fraught with danger, but they were resolute, their resolve unshakable. Finally, they reached the source of the dampening field, a towering structure bristling with alien technology. Malik signaled his team, their movements synchronized as they planted charges at strategic points. Colonel, we're in position. Malik's voice crackled over the comms, his words a lifeline in the darkness. Proceed with caution, Sergeant, Boss instructed, her heart pounding in her chest. As the charges detonated, a brilliant flash lit up the sky, the shockwave reverberating through the sphere. For a moment, everything seemed to stand still, the world holding its breath. Then, like a dam breaking, their systems roared back to life. The dampening field was down, and the tide of battle shifted. Sensors flared with activity, targeting systems locking onto the Antarian forces with newfound clarity. Colonel, it worked. We're getting full readings now, Harris exclaimed, the excitement in his voice infectious. Boss allowed herself a brief smile, the weight on her shoulders lifting ever so slightly. Launch the counteroffensive, hit them with everything we've got. The command center erupted into action, the relief and determination palpable. As their forces rallied, the Antarians found themselves on the back foot, their advantage slipping away. Yet even as hope surged, Boss knew the battle was far from over. The Antarians were relentless, their resolve unyielding. They would not be defeated easily, and the cost of victory would be steep. Colonel, enemy reinforcements inbound. Multiple signatures, larger than anything we've seen before, Harris warned, his eyes wide with disbelief. Boss's heart sank, the enormity of the threat crashing down around her. The Antarians were not done yet, and their full might was descending upon them. Prepare for impact. We hold this line, no matter what, Boss commanded, her voice steady despite the rising tide of fear. As the battle raged on, the Dyson sphere echoed with the cries of war, the human spirit tested to its limits. The struggle for survival, for freedom, was far from over, and the cost would be counted in blood and sacrifice. Yet even in the face of overwhelming odds, they would fight. For the fallen, for the living, for the future that was slipping through their fingers. They would stand together, defiant to the last, against the darkness that threatened to consume them. The air hung heavy with the acrid smell of smoke and scorched metal, remnants of yet another brutal encounter with the alien forces that now swarmed across the surface of the Dyson sphere. The humans, battered and outnumbered, had taken refuge in a small enclave burrowed into the sphere's infrastructure, a haphazard sanctuary formed of twisted metal and the remnants of once great technologies. Major Ethan Reyes, eyes bleary from lack of sleep, stood before a makeshift map that sprawled across a rusted metal table. His fingers traced the lines of the power conduits, the nerve system of the sphere, and his mind raced to find the next move, the next chance at survival. His team, a ragtag bunch of soldiers and engineers, had become his family in this hellish landscape, united by a shared desperation and dwindling hope. Their current position was precarious, perched on the edge of a vast chasm that cut across the sphere's surface like a scar. The enemy, relentless and technologically superior, had pushed them to the brink. Yet, it was the knowledge of Earth's vulnerability that ate at him. The aliens, despite their overwhelming advantage, could not consume Earth's food, a fact that had initially seemed a small victory. But the truth was, it only intensified the war. Earth had become a prize, a resource to be claimed and controlled, not consumed. Major, the voice came from Sergeant Linda Chen, a soldier with eyes that had seen too much yet retained a flicker of defiant fire. She approached, her boots echoing softly in the cavernous room. Scouts report increased enemy movement in Sector 5. They're tightening the noose. Ethan nodded, his jaw clenched. They know we're cornered. He turned to face her, and for a moment, the weight of command pressed heavily on his shoulders. How's morale? Linda hesitated, a shadow crossing her face. Fractured. We're holding together, but we've lost 6 more this past week. Supplies are running low, and the men are tired. We all are. Ethan's gaze fell to the map once more, tracing paths that might offer some glimmer of escape or advantage. We have to keep moving. If we stay here, they'll overrun us. We need to find a way to disrupt their supply lines, make them rethink their strategy. Linda nodded, though her eyes betrayed the doubt that gnawed at her. And if that doesn't work, then we make them pay for every inch, Ethan said, his voice steely with resolve. We can't let them have Earth, not without a fight. Meanwhile, deeper within the enclave, Dr. Sophie Patel sat hunched over a console, her fingers dancing across the keys in a rhythm that spoke of fevered desperation. As the chief engineer, she was tasked with understanding the sphere's complex systems, a puzzle that grew more intricate and impossible with each passing hour. Any luck? Came a voice, pulling her from the depths of her thoughts. It belonged to Corporal Marcus Lee, one of the younger members of their group, and his presence was a welcome distraction from her frustrations. Sophie sighed, pushing her hair back from her forehead. Luck? I think we've left that behind, Marcus. The sphere's systems are. It's like trying to unravel the history of the universe with a spoon. He chuckled, a sound so rare these days it almost startled her. I don't know, Doc. I've seen you work miracles with less. She managed a small smile, though it didn't reach her eyes. Miracles aren't exactly what's called for here. We need solutions, answers. Something that gives us a fighting chance. Marcus leaned against the console, his expression earnest. We'll figure it out. We always do. The words were meant to bolster, but Sophie felt the sting of their emptiness. What if there isn't an answer, Marcus? What if we're just delaying the inevitable? He hesitated, then placed a hand on her shoulder. Then we make what time we have count. In another corner of the enclave, Private Ellie Sanders sat with her back against the cold metal wall, her rifle resting across her knees. Her thoughts were a tangled web of fear and determination, and she found herself circling back to her family on Earth, their faces vivid in her mind's eye. Thinking of home? The question came from Corporal Jameson, who had settled down beside her. His presence was solid and reassuring, a steadying force amid the chaos. Ellie nodded, her voice barely above a whisper. I promised my little brother I'd be home for his birthday. He's turning 10 next month. Jameson's face softened, and he nodded towards the sphere's ceiling, where the artificial sky glimmered with distant stars. We'll get back, for him, for all of them. The words should have been comforting, but they felt hollow in the vastness of their situation. And if we don't? She asked, the tremor in her voice betraying the fear she tried so hard to bury. Then we make sure they know we fought for them, Jameson replied, his tone fierce with conviction. That it wasn't in vain. The conversations were like threads weaving through the enclave, binding the humans together in a tapestry of shared purpose and unspoken dread. Yet, beneath the surface, tensions simmered, the strain of constant battle fraying nerves and eroding trust. As the humans planned their next move, the alien forces continued to tighten their grip. Their technology was beyond anything humans had ever encountered, a blend of organic and synthetic that adapted with frightening speed. Each engagement left the humans scrambling to understand the capabilities of their enemy, often too late to counter effectively. And then came the news they had all dreaded. The aliens had broken through one of the main gates to Earth's food reserves, a place fortified with the hope of protecting their most precious resource. The assault had been swift and brutal, leaving devastation in its wake. Ethan called a meeting, his voice echoing through the enclave. "We've lost the reserves," he announced, the words heavy with the weight of their implications. "We need to assume the enemy has access to enough data to replicate Earth's food production if they find a way around their inability to process it naturally." Desperation clawed at the edges of the gathering, eyes flicking to one another as if searching for some hidden reassurance. But there was none to be found. "What do we do now, Major?" Linda asked, her voice steady despite the tremor of urgency that lay beneath. Ethan's gaze swept the room, taking in the weary faces that looked to him for leadership. "We need to buy time," he said finally. "Time to find a way to fight back, to disrupt their plans. If we can make them doubt their strategy, even for a moment, it might give us the edge we need." Sophie stepped forward, a flicker of determination in her eyes. "I've been working on a way to overload the power conduits. If we can create a cascade failure, it might disrupt their systems long enough for us to regroup." A murmur rippled through the crowd, a fragile thread of hope woven into the fabric of their despair. "It's risky," Sophie continued, "and there's no guarantee it'll work the way we need it to. But it's something." Ethan nodded, the weight of leadership settling over him once more. "Then we make it happen. We adapt, we fight, and we survive. For Earth, for everyone we left behind." The plan was set in motion, each member of the enclave throwing themselves into their tasks with renewed vigor. The specter of defeat loomed large, but the humans clung to the slivers of hope they had managed to carve from their circumstances. Yet, as they worked, the true scale of the alien threat became apparent. Reports filtered in of new enemy fortifications, their technology evolving with each encounter, growing ever more insurmountable. The aliens, it seemed, were learning from the humans, adapting to their tactics with a speed that was both terrifying and awe-inspiring. In the face of such overwhelming odds, the enclave's resolve was tested to its limits. Arguments broke out, tempers flared, and the fragile unity they had forged began to crack under the strain. Ethan found himself mediating disputes more often than planning strategies, his role as leader shifting to that of peacemaker. The burden weighed heavily on him, each decision a potential spark in a powder keg of fear and despair. Yet, amid the chaos, moments of humanity shone through. Marcus and Sophie, once colleagues bound by duty, found solace in each other's company, their shared laughter a rare and precious gift. Linda, fierce and unyielding, became a beacon of strength for those around her, her quiet confidence a balm to frayed nerves. And Ellie, driven by the memory of her brother, found purpose in the fight, her determination fueling her actions even as doubt gnawed at the edges of her resolve. As the day of reckoning approached, the enclave braced itself for the culmination of their efforts. The plan was audacious, a desperate gamble that offered no guarantees. But it was the only path left to them, a flickering flame in the encroaching darkness. The humans prepared for the assault, each step laden with the weight of what was at stake. The sphere loomed around them, a silent witness to their struggle, its vastness both a prison and a battlefield. In the hours preceding the attack, Ethan gathered his team one last time. "Whatever happens, we stand together," he said, his voice steady despite the turmoil within. "For Earth, for each other, we stand, and we fight." The words echoed through the enclave, a rallying cry that reverberated in the hearts of those who heard it. And as they stepped into the unknown, their resolve hardened by the fires of adversity, they carried with them the hope that somewhere, somehow, humanity's spirit would endure. In the silence that followed, the Enclave held its breath, poised on the precipice of fate, the outcome uncertain but the will to survive undiminished. The harsh, artificial light of the Dyson sphere cast long shadows over the battlefield, where the human contingent fought tooth and nail against the relentless onslaught of the Xyrix forces. The once vibrant and lush terrain had been reduced to a hellscape of smoldering ruins and scorched earth. The air was thick with the acrid stench of burning metal and the cries of the wounded and dying, a testament to the brutal nature of the war that had engulfed the sphere. Captain Alara Voss stood amidst the chaos, her mind racing as she tried to make sense of the unfolding disaster. The Xyrix had launched a surprise assault on their forward base, exploiting a weakness in their defenses that had gone unnoticed. It was as if the aliens had an uncanny ability to predict their every move, staying one step ahead at every turn. She had to admit, begrudgingly, that they were formidable opponents. "Captain, we need to fall back," Lieutenant Jakob Rain urged, his voice cracking with urgency as he motioned towards the dwindling line of human soldiers desperately trying to hold their ground. Alara clenched her jaw, her heart heavy with the weight of the decision she knew she had to make. "Pull back to the secondary position. We can't afford to lose any more," she ordered, her voice resolute despite the turmoil within her. The order rippled through the ranks, and the humans began a hasty retreat, falling back to a hastily established defensive line. But the Xyrix were relentless, their metallic forms cutting through the human lines with precision and efficiency. Alara watched in horror as the enemy pressed their advantage, their superior numbers and technology threatening to overwhelm her beleaguered forces. "Command, this is Captain Voss," she barked into her comms, hoping against hope for a miracle. "We need reinforcements on the eastern flank, now." There was a crackle of static, then a voice replied, tinged with desperation. "Negative, Captain. All available units are engaged. You're on your own." Alara cursed under her breath, the knot in her chest tightening. She turned her attention to the task at hand, her mind working overtime to devise a plan, any plan, to turn the tide. The Xyrix had the upper hand, but humans had always been tenacious, adaptable, and unpredictable. She refused to give up without a fight. As the battle raged on, the humans began to employ tactics born of necessity and desperation. Soldiers took to the ruins, using the debris as cover, setting traps and ambushes that slowed the Xyrix advance, if only momentarily. Engineers worked feverishly to repurpose downed enemy technology, fashioning makeshift weapons that could pierce the Xyrix's armor. Medics moved through the chaos, providing aid where they could, their presence a beacon of hope amidst the despair. But every small victory came at a cost. Friends and comrades fell, their lives extinguished in the blink of an eye. Each loss was a dagger to Alara's heart, a reminder of the grim reality of their situation. Yet she pressed on, driven by a fierce determination to protect those who remained. "Captain, you need to see this," Jacob's voice came through the comms, pulling her from her reverie. She made her way to his position, crouching beside him as he pointed to a flickering holographic display. "The Xyrix are focusing their firepower here," he said, highlighting a section of their defenses. "They're trying to create a breach." Alara studied the map, her brow furrowing. "They're coordinating their attacks. It's almost like they're evolving their strategies based on our responses." Jakob nodded grimly. "It's getting harder to predict their moves. They're learning from us." A chill ran down Alara's spine. The thought of facing an enemy that could adapt as quickly as they could was terrifying. But it also sparked a flicker of defiance within her. If the Xyrix wanted to adapt, then so would they. "Get me a list of all available resources," she ordered, her mind already racing with possibilities. "If they want to play the adaptation game, we'll show them how humans do it." The hours dragged on, each one blending into the next as the battle continued. The humans fought with a ferocity that belied their dwindling numbers, their resolve bolstered by the knowledge that they had no choice but to adapt or die. They altered their tactics, using the terrain to their advantage, employing guerrilla warfare strategies that confounded the Zyrex just long enough to buy them precious time. But the enemy was relentless, their assault unending. Despite the humans' best efforts, the breaches in their defenses widened, and the Zyrex pressed ever closer to their last stronghold. The pressure was mounting, and Alara could feel the weight of the world on her shoulders. In a rare moment of respite, she found herself in the makeshift command center, staring at the tactical display. Her mind was a whirlwind of exhaustion and determination, her thoughts consumed by the enormity of the task before her. She knew they were running out of time, out of options. "Captain," Jacob's voice broke the silence, drawing her attention. "There's something you need to hear." He handed her a pair of headphones, and she listened as a recorded transmission played. It was garbled, distorted by interference, but the message was clear. "All remaining units, Rendezvous Point Alpha, last stand." Alara's heart sank. It was a message from the remnants of the Allied fleet, a desperate call for a final stand at their last fallback position. She knew that if they fell there, it would be the end. But even in the face of such despair, there was a flicker of hope. The rendezvous point was a place of strategic importance, one that could turn the tide if they could hold it. It was a long shot, but it was all they had. "Prepare to move out," she ordered, her voice steady despite the storm raging within her. "We're going to make our stand." As they prepared for the final push, Alara felt the weight of her responsibility more keenly than ever. She knew that each decision she made could mean the difference between survival and annihilation. But she also knew that she couldn't do it alone. She gathered her team, her eyes meeting each of theirs in turn. "We've been through hell together," she said, her voice firm. "But we're still here, still fighting. We've got one last shot to turn this around, and I know we can do it. We've adapted before, and we will again. We're not just fighting for ourselves. We're fighting for everyone who can't be here, for everyone we've lost." Jakob stepped forward, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "We're with you, Captain. All the way." The moment was brief, but it was enough to galvanize them, to remind them of what they were fighting for. As they made their way to the rendezvous point, the reality of their situation became clear. The Zyrex were waiting for them, a wall of implacable metal and firepower standing between them and their last hope. The battle that followed was unlike any they had faced before. The Zyrex threw everything they had at the humans, determined to crush them once and for all. But the humans fought back with a creativity and tenacity that belied their tired bodies and weary souls. They used every trick, every tactic they had learned, adapting on the fly to counter the enemy's every move. But even as they fought with every ounce of strength they possessed, the situation grew increasingly dire. Casualties mounted, and the line began to waver. Alara felt her hope slipping away, like sand through her fingers. In the midst of the chaos, she found herself face to face with a Zyrex commander, its cold, unfeeling eyes locked onto hers. It was a moment that stretched into eternity, a collision of wills that transcended the battle itself. But in that moment, Alara saw something she hadn't expected. She saw fear. The realization hit her like a bolt of lightning. The Zyrex, for all their strength and technology, feared humanity's capacity to adapt, to endure. It was their unpredictability, their indomitable spirit that posed the greatest threat. It was a glimmer of hope in the darkest hour. But hope alone couldn't win battles, and as the Zyrex commander advanced, Alara knew she had to act or lose everything. With a surge of adrenaline, she launched herself at the alien, a desperate gambit fueled by the knowledge that she had nothing left to lose. The battle raged on around them, a cacophony of chaos and destruction. The humans fought with every shred of their being, driven by the knowledge that this was their last stand. But the Zyrex's numbers and firepower were overwhelming, threatening to crush them under the weight of their advance. Alara's duel with the Zyrex commander was brutal and unforgiving, each blow traded with a ferocity born of desperation. She felt every wound, every bruise, but she refused to give in. She was fighting not just for herself, but for all of humanity. As the Xyrix forces closed in, the humans found themselves pushed to the brink. Their defenses crumbled, and the enemy surged forward, threatening to engulf them completely. It was a moment of sheer desperation, a culmination of all their efforts and sacrifices. In that darkest moment, Alara realized what truly made humans special. It wasn't just their adaptability, their ingenuity, or their resilience. It was their capacity to hope, to believe in something greater than themselves, even when all seemed lost. And so, with a final, defiant roar, she struck at the heart of the Xyrix commander, channeling every ounce of her will into the blow. It was a desperate act, one that would either seal their fate or turn the tide. As the dust settled, Alara found herself on her knees, the battlefield eerily silent around her. The Xyrix commander lay defeated, its lifeless form a testament to her resolve. But the victory was hollow, the cost too high. The humans had fought with everything they had, but it wasn't enough. They had reached their darkest moment, standing on the precipice of annihilation. Yet even in the face of despair, they refused to surrender. Because that was the essence of humanity. To fight, to endure, to hope against all odds. And as Alara looked out over the ruins of the battlefield, she knew that as long as even one of them stood, they would never truly be defeated. The air was thick with the acrid smell of burnt metal and charred flesh, a grim testament to the brutal skirmish that had unfolded on the surface of the Dyson sphere. The once vibrant colors of the human outpost were now muted under the cloak of ash and smoke. There was no respite from the constant bombardment of the sphere's defenses, which loomed over the human forces like an omnipresent, mechanical god. Lieutenant Sarah Michaels leaned against the fractured hull of a downed transport ship, the cold metal biting through her fatigues. Her face was smeared with soot and blood, a stark contrast to the determination that burned in her eyes. Around her, the remnants of her platoon huddled in the shadows, their eyes glazed with exhaustion but still flickering with the embers of defiance. They were all that remained of the 3rd Regiment, those who had survived through sheer will and a refusal to submit to the inevitable. The Dyson sphere's sentinels, an unending force of synthetic soldiers, had torn through their ranks with ruthless precision. The human front lines had crumbled, their once cohesive forces now scattered across the sphere's surface in isolated pockets of resistance. Status, Michaels. A voice crackled through the comms, barely audible over the static of interference and the distant rumble of explosions. We're pinned down, Captain. Lost contact with Bravo and Charlie. No sign of reinforcements, Sarah replied, her voice steady despite the chaos. Hold your position. We're regrouping at Waypoint Delta, Captain Lee instructed, though they both knew the odds were slim. The waypoint was miles away, past enemy lines that were tightening like a noose. Sarah caught the eye of Corporal Jameson, who was tending to a wounded soldier with makeshift bandages. He nodded subtly, understanding the unspoken command. They couldn't wait for reinforcements that might never come. Listen up, Sarah called out, her voice cutting through the din. We're going to make a run for the ridge. It's our only shot to get a signal out to command. We need to let them know we're still fighting. That ridge is crawling with sentinels, Jameson reminded her, his tone not of dissent but of grim awareness. And it's our only chance, Sarah countered, her resolve unwavering. We either die here or we take the fight to them. There was a murmur of assent, a ripple of steely resolve passing through the beleaguered soldiers. They had come too far, endured too much, to concede defeat now. The group moved with practiced silence, a ghostly procession slipping through the ruins. The landscape around them was a twisted mockery of life, the Dyson sphere's surface littered with the detritus of both human and machine. The sentinels patrolled methodically, their movements precise, unyielding, and seemingly devoid of any weakness. Each step felt like a gamble, every breath an act of defiance. As they neared the ridge, Sarah halted, raising her fist to signal the squad. Ahead, the ground sloped upward into a jagged crest, behind which lay the communications array, a relic of an old mining operation, now their only hope for reaching command. The sentinels were clustered around it, a phalanx of steel and circuitry that seemed insurmountable. "We'll make noise. Draw them away," Sarah decided, outlining a plan with the urgency of desperation. "Jameson, take Williams and flank from the east. The rest of you, with me. On my mark, we hit them hard. We don't stop until that signal's sent." The seconds stretched into an eternity, each heartbeat echoing in Sarah's ears as she watched the sentinels for any sign of weakness. Then, with a deep breath, she shouted, "Mark!" The squad burst into action, their movements a symphony of chaos and precision. Gunfire erupted, the air alive with the crack of bullets and the whirring hum of sentinel energy weapons. Sarah led the charge, ducking and weaving through the hail of fire, her rifle an extension of her will. The sentinels responded with mechanical efficiency, shifting to intercept the threat, their overconfidence evident in their predictable maneuvers. Jameson's team struck from the east, their assault a hammer blow against the sentinels' flank. The diversion was enough. The sentinels faltered, their collective focus momentarily fractured. "Go, go," Sarah shouted, urging her squad forward. She could feel the ground tremble beneath her feet, the thundering march of reinforcements echoing from the sphere's depths. Time was slipping through their fingers like sand. As they reached the base of the ridge, a sentinel loomed before them, its red optics zeroing in on Sarah. She didn't hesitate, unloading her last clip into its core, watching as it staggered and fell with a crash that sent debris skittering across the ground. The climb was a blur of adrenaline and desperation, the ridge a steep ascent that taxed their weary bodies to the limit. At the top, the old communications array stood like a sentinel of its own, battered but still intact. "Get that signal out," Sarah ordered, her voice hoarse from shouting. Williams, their tech specialist, dove into action, his fingers flying over the controls. Around them, the battle raged on, the sentinels regrouping for another assault. Each second felt like an eternity, the air thick with the tension of impending doom. "Signals up," Williams announced triumphantly, his face lit by the flickering glow of the console. "Send it," Sarah urged, her heart pounding in her chest. "Get us some damn reinforcements." As Williams worked the controls, a sentinel emerged from the smoke, its weapon bearing down on their position. There was no time to react, no time to think. Instinct took over as Sarah threw herself in front of the console, her body absorbing the brunt of the impact to shield the precious signal. Pain exploded through her, a white-hot lance that seared through her nerves. She staggered, her vision blurring as she clung to consciousness by sheer willpower. "Signal sent," Williams confirmed, his voice a distant echo in her ears. "We did it," but Sarah could feel the life slipping from her, the edges of her vision darkening. She slumped against the console, her breath ragged and shallow. "Hold the line," she gasped, her voice barely more than a whisper. "Hold it for humanity." Her squad closed ranks around her, their weapons trained on the advancing sentinels. They would not abandon their post, not now, not ever. Amidst the chaos, Sarah felt a strange sense of peace wash over her. She had done her part, had held the line against impossible odds. And as the darkness closed in, she knew that humanity's spirit would not be so easily extinguished. The Dyson sphere's mechanical overlords watched from their control centers, confident in their victory. The humans were scattered, their forces broken, their resistance seemingly futile. But they underestimated the tenacity of the human spirit, the fire that burned even in the darkest of hours. As the sentinels closed in, ready to deliver the final blow, a distant rumble echoed through the sphere. It was a sound that resonated through the very fabric of the structure, a harbinger of change. From the depths of space, the human fleet emerged, battered but unbroken, a phoenix rising from the ashes. Reinforcements had arrived, rallying to the call that Sarah and her squad had sent. They descended upon the Dyson sphere with a fury born of desperation and hope, a storm that would not be denied. The battle was far from over, but a new chapter had begun. Humanity would rise from the abyss, fueled by the sacrifice of those who had paved the way. The Dyson sphere had underestimated them, and now it would face the full force of human determination. In the heart of the sphere, as the tide of battle shifted, a lone figure lay amidst the wreckage. Sarah's eyes fluttered open for a moment, just long enough to see the reinforcements descending, to hear the roar of human engines and the crackle of weapon fire. A faint smile touched her lips, a final testament to the indomitable spirit that refused to die. And then, everything changed. In the heart of the Dyson sphere, the oppressive darkness of the battlefield was punctuated only by the flickering lights of distant explosions. The air was thick with the smell of scorched metal and the cries of the wounded. The alien coalition, a formidable force composed of multiple species, had been confident in their conquest. Their technology was superior, their numbers vast. They had viewed humanity as little more than a minor inconvenience, an upstart race that had dared to venture too far into the galactic domain. Yet, in the midst of the chaos, there was something unsettling. The initial assaults, which had seemed so promising, were met with unexpected resistance. Human forces, though battered and pushed to the brink, refused to yield. Instead, they fought with a tenacity that defied logic, their resolve unbroken by the overwhelming odds stacked against them. Commander Zauroth of the Zythorian fleet, a seasoned veteran of countless campaigns, watched from the bridge of his flagship. His eyes narrowed as he observed the tactical display. The humans, in their ragtag ships, had begun to form an impenetrable wedge, a seemingly simple maneuver that should have been easily dismantled. Yet, the precision and coordination with which they executed it was unlike anything he'd seen from them before. "How are they doing this?" Zauroth muttered, more to himself than the officers around him. "Their technology is primitive, yet they hold their ground." A junior officer, his scales shimmering with the stress of the situation, hesitated before speaking. "Commander, our intelligence reports indicated that their strategic capabilities were limited. Perhaps we underestimated their adaptability." Zauroth grunted, unwilling to admit a flaw in their assessments. The Zythorians prided themselves on their intelligence networks, their ability to foresee and counter any potential threat. Yet, here they were, facing adversaries who seemed to grow stronger with every encounter. Meanwhile, on the surface of the Dyson sphere, a young human engineer named Kara was elbow-deep in a console, her fingers flying over the interface with desperation. Sparks flew as she manipulated the ancient technology of the sphere, a relic of a bygone civilization that humanity had stumbled upon in their exploration. The Coalition had coveted this artifact, its potential energy enough to power entire fleets, if only its secrets could be unlocked. Kara's heart pounded in her chest. They were close, so close to deciphering the sphere's enigmatic systems. If they could harness even a fraction of its power, it might be enough to turn the tide. But time was running out, and the Coalition forces were closing in. "How's it going, Kara?" A voice crackled over her comm. It was Lieutenant Commander Marcus, leader of the defense forces stationed at the control hub. "Not great," Kara replied, frustration evident in her tone. "This technology it's like trying to read a book in a language you've never seen before. But I think I'm starting to get it." Marcus's voice was grim. "We need a miracle, Kara. The front lines are barely holding. Whatever you can do, do it fast." Kara nodded, though he couldn't see her. "I'll do my best." As Kara worked, Marcus and his team continued their desperate struggle against the invaders. The Coalition's forces were relentless, their advanced weaponry slicing through human defenses with chilling efficiency. Yet, despite the casualties, despite the seemingly insurmountable odds, the humans refused to break. In the depths of the sphere, a group of technicians, scientists, and soldiers had gathered around a makeshift command center. They were a motley crew, drawn together by necessity and the shared knowledge that their survival depended on one another. Among them was Dr. Aisha Patel, a physicist whose insights had already proved invaluable in deciphering parts of the sphere's systems. "We're running out of time," Aisha said, her voice steady despite the chaos around her. "Kara's close, but if we don't hold them off a little longer, it won't matter." Captain Reynolds, the ranking officer present, nodded. His face was lined with exhaustion, but his eyes remained fierce. "We hold," he said simply. No matter what, the coalition forces were well aware of the humans' precarious situation. Their commanders had anticipated a swift victory, a decisive blow that would crush any hope the humans might cling to. Yet, as they pushed forward, they were met with resistance that was as baffling as it was infuriating. Human soldiers fought with a ferocity that belied their dwindling numbers, using the terrain to their advantage, setting traps that slowed and frustrated the coalition's advance. Back on the Zythorian flagship, Commander Zauroth could sense the shift. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but it was there. The humans were not retreating. Instead, they fought as if they believed victory was within their grasp. How could they be so blind? "Intensify the bombardment," Zauroth ordered. "We will crush their spirit. They have nothing left." But even as he spoke, a sense of unease gnawed at him. Reports were coming in of supply lines disrupted, of sabotage that had crippled crucial equipment. Somehow, the humans were managing to strike back with precision that should have been beyond them. In one of the many skirmishes, Private Jenkins found himself separated from his unit, pinned down behind a jagged outcrop. His pulse raced, every instinct screaming at him to run, to find cover, to survive. But then he heard it, a voice, faint through the din of battle. It was his squad leader, calling out, urging him to regroup. Jenkins took a deep breath, peering around the rock. The alien soldiers were advancing, their movements methodical, their weapons glinting ominously in the dim light. He knew he couldn't stay there forever. He had to move. Gritting his teeth, Jenkins darted out from his cover, firing as he ran. The world seemed to blur around him, adrenaline sharpening his senses. He felt a searing pain in his side, but he ignored it, focused on reaching his comrades. Each step was a testament to the indomitable human spirit, a refusal to surrender, to accept defeat. As the battle raged on, Kara's fingers danced over the console with renewed urgency. She could feel it. She was on the verge of unlocking a critical piece of the puzzle. The sphere's systems had begun to respond, the ancient machinery humming to life under her touch. "I'm almost there," she murmured, her voice barely audible over the roar of the conflict outside. Just a little more. On the Coalition's command ship, General Thalbach watched the unfolding battle with a mixture of disbelief and growing respect. The humans were unpredictable, chaotic even, but there was a method to their madness. They adapted with a fluidity that was disconcerting, turning every setback into an advantage. "They're like cornered beasts," one of his advisors remarked. "Desperate, but dangerous." Thalbach nodded, his gaze fixed on the tactical display. "This is not desperation," he said slowly. "This is determination. There is a difference." Minutes stretched into what felt like hours, every second laden with tension. The coalition forces pressed their assault, seeking to break through the human defenses once and for all. But as they did, a change began to ripple through the battlefield. The Dyson sphere's surface, once dormant, now shimmered with energy. Beams of light arced across the landscape, forming a protective barrier that repelled the coalition's attacks. It was Kara's doing. Her work had activated a defensive system, one that had lain dormant for millennia. On the ground, human soldiers felt the shift, an almost palpable change in the air. Where there had been despair, now there was hope. They fought with renewed vigor, rallying around the realization that they were not alone, that they had a chance. Commander Zauroth's eyes widened as the reports flooded in. The humans had somehow tapped into the sphere's power, using it to fortify their positions. "This is impossible," he muttered. "How could they have done this?" But as the commander grappled with the implications, on the surface, a young engineer stood amidst the chaos, her hands shaking with exhaustion yet steadied by the knowledge of what she had achieved. Kara looked up at the sky, at the swirling energies that shielded her people, and felt a surge of pride. "We can do this," she whispered to herself, as much a reminder as a declaration. And in that moment, humanity's true strength was revealed, not in their technology or their numbers, but in their indomitable will, their capacity to rise above adversity, to find light in the darkest of times. General Thalbach, watching from the safety of his command ship, realized the truth that had eluded them. They had underestimated humanity, seen them only as a primitive race, failing to recognize the depth of their spirit. A spirit that, once ignited, could not be easily extinguished. As the battle continued, a new resolve took hold of the human forces. They fought not just for survival, but for victory, for a future that they would carve out with their own hands. The Dyson sphere, a symbol of power and mystery, had become a beacon of hope in their struggle. And as the coalition's forces reeled from the unexpected turn of events, one thing became abundantly clear: humanity was not to be underestimated. They were fighters, survivors, and they would not go quietly into the night. In the days that followed, the humans pressed their newfound advantage, leveraging the sphere's defenses to strike back at their oppressors. They launched daring raids, sabotaging key installations, spreading chaos within the coalition ranks. Each successful strike was a reminder that they were not alone, that they had allies in unexpected places. The tide had shifted, and though the battle was far from over, the coalition's commanders knew that they faced an adversary unlike any they had encountered before. Humanity, with all its flaws and contradictions, had become a force to be reckoned with. As the smoke of destruction lingered over the battlefield, a new chapter in the war was unfolding. One that would test the limits of courage and ingenuity, that would push humanity to the brink and beyond. And at its heart was a simple truth: the human spirit, once awakened, was unstoppable. With the Dyson sphere as their shield, humanity stood ready to face whatever the galaxy might throw at them. Their resolve was unbreakable, their determination unmatched, and as they prepared for the battles to come, they did so with the knowledge that they had already achieved the impossible. For in the darkest hour, when hope seemed lost, they had found within themselves the strength to rise, to fight, to prevail. And the universe would learn that humanity, once underestimated, was a force that could not be contained. Sparks flared in the darkness, flickering against the cold, impossibly vast backdrop of the Dyson sphere's inner shell. A sea of stars and solar panels stretched infinitely, bathing everything in a constant, harsh daylight. The great construct, a testament to a civilization that had long since vanished, now stood as both a battlefield and a prize, one the alien Exwilan had intended to claim without contest. Yet, the humans, the stubborn, unpredictable newcomers in the cosmic arena, had resisted. They had slipped through the cracks of ancient defenses, navigated the labyrinthine corridors of the sphere, and now, here they were, in the heart of the celestial machine, making their final stand. Shields at maximum, Colonel Isaac Granger's voice cut through the chaos, calm and authoritative. He stood on the command bridge of the Tempest, a ship born of desperation and ingenuity, its armor marred with scorch marks and the scars of battle. Around him, the crew moved with a precision born of countless drills and a shared, unyielding determination. The Exwilan fleet, an armada of sleek, obsidian ships, maneuvered into position, a predatory pack seeking to deliver the death blow. Their commander, High Marshal Kales, watched from the bridge of the flagship, his confidence unshaken. To him, humans were a minor inconvenience, an unexpected yet ultimately futile annoyance. Yet, something gnawed at the edge of his consciousness, a growing unease, a whisper of doubt. The humans had come further than any had anticipated. They had breached the unbreachable, and now, they were doing the unthinkable. Reports had filtered through the Exwilan ranks of incredible feats, of human soldiers defeating drones with nothing more than their fists, of pilots performing maneuvers that defied physics, of engineers reprogramming systems in seconds that should have taken hours. On the Tempest, Granger turned to his second-in-command, Lieutenant Sarah Yates. "This is it. Activate the override protocol." Yates nodded, her face a mask of determination. "Yes, sir." Her fingers danced across the console, initiating a sequence that had been rehearsed countless times, yet never truly believed possible until now. Across the Dyson sphere, hidden relays and conduits, dormant for eons, hummed to life. The humans had discovered them, ancient pathways of energy and control, remnants of the original builders. They had spent weeks deciphering their secrets, unlocking the power that lay dormant beneath the surface. The X-Wyland ships began to fire, beams of searing energy lancing across the void. The Tempest shook under the onslaught, but held firm. Granger watched the sensors, waiting, hoping. Then, with a terrible beauty, the Dyson sphere awoke. A cascade of light erupted from the structure, arcs of energy leaping from panel to panel, converging on the X-Wyland fleet. It was as if the sphere itself had become a weapon, a vast, celestial storm brought to life by human hands. The energy washed over the X-Wyland ships, disrupting their systems, rendering their weapons useless, their shields impotent. Kales watched in horror as his fleet faltered, his ships caught in a web of light and power, their sleek forms shuddering and failing. The realization struck him like a physical blow. He had underestimated them, the humans, the seemingly primitive species that had defied every expectation, every estimation of their capabilities. How? He whispered, the word a-tremble in the charged air of his bridge. Yet he knew the answer, even as he asked it. The humans had seen the sphere not just as a tool of war, but as something more, a legacy to be understood, a challenge to be met. And in that understanding, they had found their victory. On the Tempest, Granger allowed himself a small, weary smile. We did it, he breathed, the words barely audible over the hum of the ship. Around him, the crew erupted in cheers, a sound of triumph and release that echoed in the confines of the bridge. But even in victory, there was no celebration. Too many had been lost, too much sacrificed. The sphere was a Pyrrhic prize, a hollow victory in a war that had taken so much. Granger looked at the screens, at the now blazing sphere, and felt the weight of those who would not see this moment, those who had given everything to make it possible. Yates touched his arm, her eyes filled with both pride and sorrow. It's over, she said softly. He nodded, unable to find words. The echoes of battle still rang in his mind, the faces of those he had led, those he had lost. Yet in that moment, in the heart of the sphere, among the ruins of a civilization that had fallen to time, humanity had proven itself. They had taken the impossible and made it real, had turned the tide against an enemy that had thought them weak. Kales, watching from his crippled flagship, knew the battle was lost. He saw the human ship, scarred and battered, yet unyielding, and understood that he had misjudged them not just in strength, but in spirit. The humans were not conquerors, nor were they mere survivors. They were something more, pioneers of their own fate, architects of their destiny. And he, the High Marshal, had failed to see it until now. As the X-Wyland fleet began to retreat, the remnants scattered and broken, Granger ordered the Tempest to stand down. The lights of the sphere dimmed, the energy subsiding, leaving a profound silence in its wake. In that silence, the reality of their victory settled in. A victory not just of arms, but of will, of intellect and courage. The Dyson sphere, a relic of the ancients, now stood as a testament to human resilience, to their ability to rise above, to endure and prevail. And as they began to navigate the path home, the stars watched silently over the sphere, over the battlefield that had witnessed the peak of human excellence, the moment when humanity had truly come into its own. The path ahead was uncertain, but it was theirs to walk, forged in the fires of conflict and tempered by their indomitable spirit. The journey back was long, the silence of space a stark contrast to the chaos of battle. The crew of the Tempest moved through their duties with a solemnity that spoke of the gravity of their achievement, and of the losses that shadowed their triumph. Granger sat in his quarters, the reports of damage and casualties spread before him, but his mind was elsewhere. He thought of the faces, the names of those who had fallen, and of those who had stood beside him, unwavering even in the face of overwhelming odds. Their sacrifice had not been in vain. They had secured a future for their people, carved a place in the stars with their courage and resolve. Yet, the cost weighed heavily upon him. Each name, each face, was a reminder of the price they had paid. In the quiet of his cabin, he allowed himself to grieve, to feel the loss that had been held at bay by necessity and duty. Yates found him there, a silent sentinel who had shared the burden of command, the weight of decisions that had led them here. She sat with him, and for a time, they simply sat in silence, sharing the unspoken grief and the unyielding pride in what they had achieved. "Do you think it was worth it?" she asked finally, her voice barely a whisper. Granger's gaze drifted to the window, to the stars that stretched endlessly beyond the hull. "I don't know," he admitted, "but I do know that we couldn't have done it any other way. We had to try, we had to fight, and we won," Yates said, a note of defiance in her voice, a reminder of the indomitable spirit that had carried them through. "Yes," Granger agreed, his voice stronger now, "we won." The Tempest continued its journey, the Dyson sphere fading into the distance, a monument to their struggle and their victory. As they moved through the vastness of space, the crew began to look forward, to the challenges and opportunities that awaited them beyond the horizon of this battle. In the aftermath of their triumph, humanity stood at a new threshold, a chance to redefine themselves, to forge a path that could lead them to new discoveries, new worlds. The Dyson sphere, once a symbol of loss and conflict, now represented their potential, a beacon of hope in the vast expanse of the cosmos. And as the Tempest sailed into the starry void, the echoes of their struggle lingered, a testament to the resilience and determination that had brought them through. The story of their victory would be told, shared across generations, a reminder of what humanity could achieve when pushed to the brink, and of the spirit that had seen them through the darkest of times. In the end, the Dyson Sphere Warzone became a chapter in the greater narrative of human endeavor, a story of courage, of sacrifice, and of the unyielding will to overcome even the greatest of challenges. It was a tale of humanity at its best, a moment of triumph forged in the fires of conflict, tempered by loss, and illuminated by the light of their indomitable spirit. And as they ventured forth, the stars bore witness to their journey, to the legacy they would forge in their wake, a legacy of hope, of resilience, and of a future yet to be written. The battle had ended, but the silence that followed was anything but peaceful. The air was thick with the acrid scent of burnt metal and charred flesh, remnants of what had once been a vibrant, albeit alien, civilization. The Dyson sphere, humanity's new prize, loomed around them like a hollow shell, its vastness now echoing with the cries of the vanquished. Admiral Elena Vasquez stood on the bridge of the human flagship, her eyes scanning the vast expanse of the once hostile megastructure. She felt the weight of victory like a heavy chain around her neck, each link forged from the lives lost and the sacrifices made. The human fleet had triumphed, but the cost had been cataclysmic. Entire battalions had been wiped out, and planets left defenseless as every possible resource was funneled into securing this Pyrrhic victory. The Dyson sphere was theirs, but in the aftermath, it felt like an empty triumph. The hollow victory resonated within the hearts of all the survivors. They had won, but at what cost? Dr. Marcus Harlan, the lead scientist whose vision had driven humanity to this war, walked through the devastated corridors of the Dyson sphere. His mind, once filled with dreams of unlocking the secrets of alien technology, was now haunted by the ghosts of those who had fallen. Despite the victory, he felt an overwhelming sense of loss. The alien race that had built this marvel was gone forever, their knowledge lost to the void. In their place, humanity had imprinted its own bloody legacy. As he passed the massive conduits and dormant machinery, Marcus knew that the task ahead was immense. The Dyson sphere was now humanity's greatest asset, but it was also a monument to their hubris. He vowed silently to ensure that this technology would never be used for conquest again, but instead would serve as a beacon for peace and prosperity. Meanwhile, General Liu Wei, the stalwart commander who had led the ground forces, surveyed the battlefield littered with the remnants of both human and alien soldiers. His heart ached for his fallen comrades, the soldiers who had followed him to this distant edge of the galaxy. They had fought bravely, believing in the promise of a better future. Now, Lu was determined to make sure their sacrifices were not in vain. He had seen the horrors of war up close, witnessed the brutality that lay dormant in every human heart. Yet, even amidst the devastation, he saw a glimmer of hope. Humanity had survived, and with survival came the chance for redemption. He resolved to dedicate the rest of his life to rebuilding the fractured alliance of human colonies, a united front that could harness the Dyson sphere's energy for the betterment of all. Back on Earth, the people celebrated, their cheers echoing through the night as news of the victory spread. But beneath the jubilation lay an undercurrent of grief, a nation mourning for its lost sons and daughters. The victory had come at a steep price, and as the reality of the human cost set in, the celebrations turned somber. President Anna Richards addressed the world from the steps of the Capitol. Her voice, though filled with solemn pride, carried the weight of a leader who had sent her people to war. "We have won," she declared, "but let us not forget the cost. The blood of our heroes has watered the tree of liberty, and now it is our duty to ensure that their sacrifices lead to a future of peace, not further conflict." In the weeks that followed, humanity's influence spread throughout the galaxy, the Dyson sphere serving as both a symbol of their power and a reminder of the devastating cost of their ambition. The human colonies, once disparate and isolated, began to rally together, forming a coalition dedicated to using their newfound power responsibly. The alien remnants, those who had survived the onslaught, were integrated into human society. They brought with them the wisdom of their lost civilization, contributing to a new era of understanding and cooperation. Together, they began the daunting task of rebuilding what had been destroyed, forging a new path that honored the past while looking to the future. For Admiral Vasquez, Dr. Harlan, and General Lu, the journey was far from over. They had been changed by the war, their lives entwined with the fate of the Dyson sphere. Each carried the scars of battle, yet each was driven by a shared vision of a better tomorrow. As they stood together on the observation deck, looking out at the sprawling machinery of the Dyson sphere, a sense of unity washed over them. Humanity had proven itself, not through might alone, but through the resilience of the human spirit. They had survived, they had conquered, and now they had a chance to build something greater. In the depths of space, the Dyson sphere hummed to life, a testament to the indomitable will of humanity, forever changed, yet more united than ever before.